Here's update number 6 to the Reddit story of I think my husband fathered his best friend's children. Now, if you're not familiar with the story, go ahead and check out the previous videos on this channel. Let's get into the update. It's been a while. Things have continued to spiral. Had a number of comments and private messages wanting to check in, which I appreciate. While I obviously still can't talk about much, I've shown this post to my legal counsel before uploading it and had it approved as safe. So, the headline here, which I already discussed in the comment, is that Luke and Amy talked about themselves as half-siblings in the letters I found on Luke's laptop. The timeline is still a bit unclear to me, but Jim had an affair with one of his college-age students, and she got pregnant. Years later, her daughter became friends with Jim's son. Amy was abused in her parents' house, and everyone in Luke's family wanted to get her out, which they eventually did. At that point, Jim told Luke and Amy the truth. It wasn't until a couple of years later that they began to sleep together. As far as recent updates, Kaylee has spent some time in a psychiatric ward. Tom discovered that she had done something very reckless. Social service have also seen fit to remove her from Luke and Amy's care, so she is currently staying with Kat. Amy hated that, and I'm told she raged for some time at the idea that I would poison Kaylee against her, and that in her anger, she made some choice threats. I have been advised not to reach out myself, but Kaylee has all my information, and I did send her a message promising her that she could always come to me about anything. If she initiates, I will not turn her away. I took my kids to a haunted house tonight, but Sophie went over to Kat's to spend some time with Kaylee and pass out trick-or-treat candy with her. My troubles are not over, and they got worse after the test results came back. Everyone was tested. I finally know the truth now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Luke is the biological father to all 4 of Amy's children. After years of wondering, confirmation feels strangely hollow. It changes almost nothing at this point, but it is proof that he was unfaithful to me. Luke is still maintaining that it was an open relationship. I had thought to use incest charges against him and Amy, but that plan hit a roadblock. The 2 of them had mandated testing as well, and at least according to the results, Luke and Amy are not siblings. I don't understand it either. Perhaps Jim was wrong all this time? Either way, I still have proof they believed it to be true, but now they are insisting that was just a kind of roleplay for them. Luke also threw a curveball at me by demanding we test my children as well. I honestly hated him for that. They've been through enough as it is. But he is claiming that I also participated in the open relationship, and that paternity of our children will prove it. In particular, he was adamant that Sophie be tested. I couldn't figure out why, but I think Luke must know something I do not, because the test results for Sophie came back negative. They said that Luke is not her father. Then Luke began to claim that he had tested Sophie years ago to be sure. I was certain he was lying, that he had somehow sabotaged the test, but he did submit a DNA test from about 10 years ago, and it likewise maintains that Luke is not Sophie's father. Before anyone asks, no, I never had an affair of my own. I never cheated on Luke. I had no idea how this had happened, and I could not make sense of it. I requested another test, and that has yet to arrive. But with 2 tests already, I'm bewildered and frightened. I don't know how this is possible. In the original post, someone suggested Luke could be a genetic trisomy. I doubt this is the case, but I asked Kat, and she doesn't know anything about Luke having absorbed a twin. Since I was never unfaithful to Luke, I could only assume that something was done without my consent. I have never been sexually assaulted as far as I am aware. But there were a few nights back when I used to get drunk with Amy that someone could have possibly drugged me. What scares me is that Luke tested Sophie years ago. I feel like he knows more than he is letting on. I've discussed this with my therapist and my lawyer. I've tried to get to the bottom of it, but I just don't know. I have been upfront about everything with Sophie. Many comments pose the idea that there was a mishap at the hospital and that Sophie may not biologically be mine. She was almost never out of my sight during that time, so I don't think it's possible, but we'll do the appropriate test to be sure anyway. I believe Luke brought this up to try and make Sophie doubt me, to drive a wedge between us. I promised her that I never had an affair, that these results are impossible. I don't think she believes me completely, but I also don't get the sense that she's angry with me or that she feels betrayed. I think she would honestly prefer if it were true at this point that Luke was not her birth father. The rest of my kids don't know about this part yet, but they probably will soon. Gossip is spreading like wildfire among Amy's kids and my own. I've never been the sort of parent to read my kids' texts, so I'm not sure about specifics. But I'm not going to address this with them unless Sophie gives me her blessing. She was the only one whose results came back negative. The rest of the kids are proven to be Luke's. Kat is not speaking to either of her children, but that's not to say she's giving them the silent treatment. Technically, they're not allowed any contact with Kaylee right now, so keeping distant isn't really optional. But Kat is furious with them both now that she's seen the state Kaylee is in. She's likely going to explode at them when she next has the chance. I wish I could describe a happy ending for our family, but the trouble is far from over. I'm actually somewhat traumatized by the idea that I might have been assaulted and never known it until now. And if that is indeed the case, I'm not looking forward to the conversation where Sophie finds out about that and about her origins. Anyways, I don't know when I'll update next, but at least by reposting, I can answer any questions you may have. Wow, there's been a lot of twists and turns. We find out some answers to the questions that we have wanted to find out in the previous post, but then threw a wrench in it when she provided more information. I was quite surprised about how Sophie is not Luke's biological child. That kind of like, what? But, it does confirm our suspicion in the previous post where they had mentioned that Luke and Amy were half siblings. So at least that's proven that. But then they also had taken a DNA test that also proved that they're actually not really siblings. So that was a little confusing too. So I don't know what's the deal. But I like this whole update post. I just feel like it answers some questions, but at the same time, it brought up even more questions at the same time. So yeah, let's see what the comment section have to say. First commenter says, "Forgive me if this was asked, but I assume since you have no suspicions of Sophie not being Luke's, does this mean she shares some similar features? I believe he said Luke was part Asian. Does Sophie show these features that she should be sharing with Luke? If so, maybe you can narrow down potential fathers if Luke is 100% not the father from your past via race. I know that's easier said than done. It's been almost 2 decades, and I know you said that if an assault happened, then it would have been while you were intoxicated. But maybe Luke and Amy were friends, maybe still are, with someone who looks similar to Luke that a lawyer could reach out to and ask if something happened. Someone else on here made a comment with some good advice. I responded to that comment, so if you haven't seen it yet, you can go through my comment history. OP does respond back to this commenter by saying, Sophie appears to be Asian, yes, She does look more like me than Luke, but she's not my spitting image or anything. Still, she looks enough like me that I find it hard to believe she isn't my blood. And then another commenter mentioned the DNA results for Sophie from years ago. Has your lawyer requested to have it authenticated? I have a sneaking suspicion Luke and Amy created bogus results to discredit you. Or they could have someone else take the test for him. Does Luke have a close friend who might be willing to do a favor for him? What about Jim? Do you think he would take the test for his son? Also, can you clarify whether or not Kat knew the entire time Amy is Jim's biological daughter? OP responds, we have. Sorry. It says, we have, yes. As far as anyone can tell, it is authentic, but I have my doubts. I don't know if anyone would be willing to assist Luke in such an endeavor. It wasn't Jim, though. He would have still shown up as grandfather. Kat didn't know until recently. When Luke and Amy were growing up, she always kind of assumed they would get together. Very suspicious. So another commenter says, don't you have the chat where they both, or at least Luke, tried to save face at the beginning and told you that there's nothing? And I'll say to do a maternity test with Sophie and talk to your lawyer about your options should it come out that you have been indeed raped. I'm throwing a hard side eye to France. And why exactly did he get her tested 10 years ago? None of this makes sense. And every judge or court sees that he's full of BS when they look at this entire thing. That's very true, though. So OP responds, says, I'm worried about testing Sophie's DNA against mine. I'm still going to, but if the test says she isn't mine, what if the state takes her away? Well, that's a valid concern, but at the same time, she grew up with you, and I'm sure in the eyes of the courts, I'm sure she can still stay with you regardless. Another commenter says, absolutely wild that Luke and Amy thought that they were half siblings all this time and still created a family together and continue to sleep together. That is some crazy crap. But definitely know something is up and why Sophie is not his child. Or else he wouldn't be so adamant for your kids to get tested. That's why the whole open relationship path took place, so they can pin it all back on OP now for having someone else's child. Thus, Luke and Amy were justified in what they did. Hope you find more crap on them and take them both down. OP responds by saying, they definitely believed it for decades, whatever they might claim now. I wonder how they're dealing with it, knowing it's not true. Ooh. A follow-up comment says, what I can't believe is that they knew her children were possibly the product of incest and were willing to let your daughter date and possibly get impregnated by her half-brother. One generation of incest is bad enough, but 2 generations in a row of half-siblings reproducing with each other definitely would have resulted in some very messed up children. They were fine with their potential grandchildren being severely disabled just to keep their secret. That's sick and should show the court how unfit both of them are as parents. OP responded by saying, I can't reveal any specific details, but I am pleased with how the case is currently going. Wow, it sounds like things are moving forward with OP right now. I hope that the OP gets her way, and I hope everything continues to in the court that it goes in the right direction. There's no more curveball, and I wish all the best to the OP. But at the same time, I would love to hear what you guys think of this story so far. Please leave it in the comments section. And if you like these types of stories, remember to continue to like and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later.